They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and for the most part that is true. Beauty is subjective at the end of the day. What one finds beautiful, another might find absolutely disgusting. But there are some things that the majority of people can agree are appealing to look at, and striving to be one of them might seem as a fruitless endeavor to most, but to some, that is their one true calling. Today I wish to speak of a clan of vampires who have dedicated themselves to beauty and the arts. The clan that wish to be above the rabble and show their status to the world, them being dazzling, showing their prestige and beauty to all. Today I wish to speak of Clan Toreador, the clan of the Rose. They are the artistes of this world, and strive to perfect whatever they task themselves to do, to the point of obsession. But do not let this fanciful delight of theirs fool you. They are one of the more powerful clans of this modern night, and they have earned this position. While some see the Ventrue as the rulers of the Camarilla, all see the Toreador as the heart of it. They might be the very thing keeping the entire thing together, in fact, depending on who you ask, and they are almost certainly the ones pulling the strings behind a lot of murky events. They are the clan who gets the most involved about the politics of our world amongst other kindred, and in many ways, they view it as its own art. Their perplexity to talk about things like this often results in them getting their gossipy reputation, allocating to the phrase, the roses in the garden, being used to refer to the Toreador who are obsessed with nothing more than kindred politics. It is the only thing they do all night. The phrase originally was meant in a derogatory manner, but in all honesty, most of them take it with pride now, openly referring to themselves as a rose in the garden. They take a lot of pride in things that most would be ashamed in. I should note this, as it is a huge aspect of their culture. They revel in pushing the limits and falling into what is little more than hedonistic debauchery. Indeed, they are one of the few clans that strive to fully give in to their own whims, usually leaning into those of a more sensual nature. This is just a given to their culture. Despite their high reputation and their insistence on being artists full and graceful, they are one of the more likely clans to actually give in to the beast and become a wight, especially when they are newly embraced. Given how much freedom and power they give to their young so quickly, it results in them taking it too far. This makes Toreadors who wish to embrace have the difficult task of being both liberating while teaching discipline to their child. It is one of the main reasons that Toreador tend to stick to only making one or two ways of art expression, be it painting, music, film, fashion, politics, whatever you truly think art is. And yes, they indulge in all of them, but they only really focus and create one or two. In fact, something as simple as wanting to know all the secrets of the land is something some of them strive to do. They are almost on par to the Nosferatu in their ability to gather secrets, although they gather them quite differently, having it whispered into their ears so that they can spread it to others for a price, of course. And, unlike the Nosferatu, you can never truly trust what a Toreador tells you. They tell you too much too quickly, and maybe that's on purpose. They truly are little spiders coiling their webs in that regard, but do not disregard them entirely. Sometimes you might need their help. They also tend to create sub-factions under the guise of these forms of artistic expression. All of the Toreador painters within a single city, for example, would want to form one of these factions that they call the guilds, and they act very much akin to how mortals mean the word. These guilds constantly fight each other for power and status, claiming Primogen is their ultimate end goal, of course. They might even view it as above the title of prince in what they want. Their guild must be the best art form and the best art expressors. And of course, this means that Toreador Primogen is actually one of the most sought-after Primogen positions, not just because Toreador are so influential, but because there's so much competition. But I should also note their obsessive nature. This is in fact their bane and their biggest problem, for they can easily lose themselves in a moment of appreciation, to the point where they could ignore the world for hours, as it burns around them, causing everything they know and love to slowly be destroyed. Only when the art piece before them breaks do they realize what they have lost. This can get even worse too, as a lot of them give themselves freely to their view of beauty. It changes over time, letting it become more and more depraved, which results in some Toreadors becoming what can only be described as absolute sadists, reveling in displays of pain, horror, and gore, truly monsters that fit in with the worst offenders of the Sabbat. This doesn't happen commonly, but this happens enough to note. Their history is one that reflects their more inert and hidden violent nature, and what better place to start than with the first Toreador. Now, given how much the Toreador love spreading rumours and telling tales, it is no surprise that the first Toreador, their Antediluvian, has many conflicting tales, and so I shall try my hardest to convey what I can. But, just for your note, no matter how I tell this tale, someone is going to be mad at me. Many even argue about what their true name was, for she has had many: Ishtar, Astarte, Aphrodite, Iana, or just Toreador. But what is clear is she was beautiful, fickle, and vain. She delighted in taking part of the whims of man, and toyed with mortals constantly. She made many power plays in the old city that Cain had founded. Little is known about her involvement in the final nights, and if I'm being honest, she most likely wasn't there and had nothing to do with it. What is known is that her fate was closely tied to one Absimiliard, the first Nosferatu. In one version of the myth, they were lovers turned rivals. In another, he forced himself upon her. Regardless, they hated each other with vitriol and constantly sought to destroy each other. And when Absimiliard was banished and cursed, she thought it didn't go far enough, and so left seeking to kill him. But, like almost everyone of that age, she suddenly vanished from the map, her fate unclear, though many claim that she has died. What is known is the various exploits of her childhood, however, most of which settled in ancient Greece and what is now the Middle East, but some went as far aflung as India and even China. But the major event that took part in the days of the past, one that they had so many fingers crawled into, was the war between the Ventrue and the Bruja, the Punic Wars, in which they swapped sides constantly, going back and forth between the two sides, never truly committing to one or the other. In fact, it was said that a Toreador started the rebellion within the Bruja that made so many younger members of their clan turn sides. Regardless, they eventually helped bring in the rise of Rome, and bent the knee to the Ventrue, like the Bruja did just before them, helping them claim the vast empire of Rome. Before its inevitable collapse, they had created two bastions of power: the Byzantine Emperor, which were made of the Greeks who were still loyal to Rome, where most of their control was maintained, and a small barbarian tribe, at the time known as the Franks, who later went on to become the country known as France. And while their presence can be found around the world, these two countries are still their strongest bastions, even their modern equivalents. Like the Ventrue, they very much chose one country to be their prime bastion of power, and in the end they chose France. Beginning, they were close allies to the Ventrue, but if legends were to be believed, there was a betrayal among lovers, that caused the two clans, and the resulting countries they controlled, to become rivals, hated rivals, until the First Inquisition, where they cast it aside almost immediately in order to save their own skin. While their more grand political plays have very much lessened in the modern knights, that is actually for a very clear reason, for they have, in essence, gotten exactly what they wanted. Art and media are now inescapable in our modern knights. Film, TV, radio, and the internet make us all unable to avoid the arts, and so they no longer care for politics, for they can distract themselves for eternity. They are in fact one of the most numerous clans, and for good reason, for in these modern knights their powers and assets are at their most useful. They're one of the few clans that have actually become more powerful due to the rise in technology, and I'd like to discuss exactly how they have this influence over the world. They have the disciplines of Auspex, Celerity, and Presence, all of which they use to manipulate others while keeping themselves completely safe in the process. And I'll start with the one I have actually yet to talk about, that being Auspex. This power simply allows one to see beyond what one is usually capable of. Heightening your senses is a very common example, letting you see more, hear more, even smell, taste, and touch more than you would before, but only really the Toreador tend to use the last three examples. But it also allows you to glimpse into the very future for but a moment, and even scry vast distances, or perhaps even possess the body of a mortal. Once I had heard of a Toreador assassin who seduced one of the bodyguards of their targets and possessed their mind in order to control them. They got close to their target, learned many secrets, including the true identity of one of their rivals, and then killed the target, framing the bodyguard and getting away scot-free, as one of that sort of power tends to do. The power they have to use the most would have to be presence, that of emotional manipulation of others, as well as changing one's own aura and how they perceive you. The Toreador mostly use this in the ways you would expect, to manipulate, persuade, and seduce those around them. But they also use this power to affect others even through a screen or over voice alone, and other communications, as well as to summon those from vast distances, demanding they come to your beck and call. As a good example of the latter, I once needed the aid of a very particular Tremere, that is a blood mage, and in order to get it, I needed to coax him out of hiding, so I called in a favour from a very powerful Toreador, who in essence runs the BBC, for they knew the Tremere. He summoned him, making the blood mage unable to ignore the call, and he rushed to the Toreador's side as fast as he could, giving me the audience I sought. And lastly, they have the power of Celerity, which is in essence super speed, and it gives them the sort of reputation for running away quite a lot. But you would be surprised how good of a fighters they actually are, due solely to this discipline. While in a straight-up fight against a Bruja or a Gangrel, they will surely fail, but one thing that they excel in is actually marksmanship. Their speed, with their combination of the vision aided by Auspex, it allows them to shoot better than any other clan, making them the best snipers around. One English Toreador, the Lady Raycroft, is a hitwoman, a sniper for the Camarilla, who I have employed the aid of from time to time. On one occasion, there was an altercation between a tribe of lupines, that is more commonly known as werewolves, who sought to end me and my coterie. We positioned her on a nearby rooftop, and watched as the foul mutts dropped one after the other, multiple shots firing before the first one was even heard, all landing on their targets. The silver bullets made it all the more fun to watch. The Toreador, however, should not be considered as fighters. It is in truth quite below them, and those that care for that sort of thing too much tend to be on the more sadistic and violent side. No, instead, if you wish to see a grand betrayal of grace and elegance, you must merely head to the nearest Elysium to talk to the roses in the garden, provided you whisper secrets in their ear, of course. Thank you for listening to my tales. I am the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next you meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.